Hey guys, Loman02 here with another deck tech and some Let's Play / game series with this deck that you have in front of you, which is a Canadian Highlander deck. 100 card singleton on a pointed list run out of Victoria Island, BC, up in Canada. So this is RG Blitz, or Red-Green Blitz. What makes a deck an aggro deck and or a Blitz deck, or what is the distinguishing factor? Well, you run pump spells in Blitz decks. So let me open my display panel real fast. We're going to go through a comprehensive deck tech, so if sitting through watching me describe how this deck does what it does not interest you, then please go down to the comments section and look at the timestamps, and you can jump to the gameplay with the deck. As a disclaimer, this deck was not designed by me. This is designed by Greg Van Horn, or at least it was piloted by him in this fiscal year for competition up at Yellow Jacket in Canada. So this is a stolen list. Okay, so a few things. Mana base is actually pretty prismatic. I actually really do not like Firelit Thicket. I think if I were to make a change, I'd probably cut this one and put City of Brass. Could have been a price point consideration, because Cities of Brass are, well, harder to find and they're expensive from Arabian Nights. This land is just, you can't really keep one-landers with this. You can keep one-landers with almost every other land in the deck, but this one. Otherwise, the deck is basically red-green. The reason it runs multiple different colors is because it's running threats like Wild Nacatl. It's running, where are you at, buddy? Curd Ape. It's also running some other cards where land types do actually matter. Another primary example is Scrapheap Scrounger. The other cool thing about running some of the dual lands in this deck, even though we are a Price of Progress deck, is that it allows you to run more fetch lands, which allows you to, to a micro extent, thin, but also get after whatever color, red or green, that you need at that given time by having more flexibility with your mana base through more fetches. That said, the mana is pretty simple. It's a 31-lander. It is running a Strip Mine and a Wasteland, so I tend not to count those as mana sources, which means it is pretty much purely at 31 with a 2 Mox point spread as well. So the point spread in the deck, before we jump any further, is Mox, Strip, and Jite. The way I have the deck broken down right now is I have like your card draw. There is more card advantage in the deck, but these cards directly put cards in your hand in some way, shape, or form. The threat pile, which is this massive pile of 33 right here, just things that get people dead really fast. The disruption pile, I consider Vortex Disruption, and the rest of these cards are pretty much disruption. Now, disruption, in some cases, may be like literal disruption, as we typically call it, like Dryad Militant and Scavenging Ooze, but some of it's damage-based disruption. Like, for instance, and you'll see in one of the games, like a card like Cindervines, does a lot of work against like Lotus Recursion with an Ariok Salvagers. So if they're trying to go Bomberman combo, it does 4 per cycle, as opposed to them doing 2 with a bomb. So this is actual literal disruption, in my opinion. I mean, it can also blow an artifact up, which kind of makes it removal as well. You'll see there's a lot of flexibility in the cards. There tends to have to be. The card, or the pile that actually makes this deck distinguishable from just like red-green aggressive or aggro, is all this pump right here. Ranker's probably played in both decks, but you have stuff like Invigorated Rampage, Colossal Might, Gorklan, which is also just a threat on its own, Collision Colossus, and Become Immense. You'll notice that all of these pump spells, with the exception of Ranker, which is only 1 mana, either pump for 6 or 4, so they do tons of damage. They also allow you to win in combat against significantly better creatures like Kalidases, or, I don't know, like maybe Dorans, I don't know. Any just big, dumb thing that gets in the way of your smaller, kind of more efficient, but generally weaker threats. These cards allow you to push through. They're also really fast clocks, so if you're basically just fishing against your opponent, or your opponent's on a blue deck and they can't, cope with a mock start, you can just turbo them over with pump spells to get them to a life total where they basically have to be afraid that they'll die to any single thing. The next pile is the removal pile right here. You basically, I'm sorry, some of this is removal. It's all burn-based removal. Some of it is like literal removal, like Grim Lavamancer. I kind of tend to think of as just pure removal. Strip Mine and Wasteland are in this pile as well because they are pointed removal. Barbering, can be burn, can be removal. Pretty much free. Vexing Devil should probably go over here and just pure burn as opposed to removal. Jit does a little bit of everything. It pumps, it kills things, it even gains you life if you need to. Tin Street Hooligan, artifact removal, Crater Maker, artifact removal, creature removal, and just a general decent 2/2. Atarka's Command should probably mostly be burn. It's also pump as well. So go to a couple piles as you go through some of these. And you have like your typical kind of just burn base removal here. You have Incendiary Flow and Pillar of Flame in this deck, which I think both inclusions are interesting because they allow you to deal with stuff like Scarab God, like Kitchen Finks, recursive threats they allow you to deal with. Abrade, just good artifact removal or creature removal. Rift Bolt, just very efficient. You get over here into the burn pile. Yep, we're running Reminap Runes in here. It's just basically free damage to our opponent. It does damage to us too, but we're looking to race. Price of Progress. Yeah, this deck runs a fairly chromatic mana base. It's not running Blood Moon for that reason. But Price of Progress still just punches so hard that if it's the last spell you're casting to win the game, you're doing pretty well. Vexing Devil tends to just be a 4 damage, 1 mana burn spell, which tends to be fine. So, anyways, jumping into the threats, you have Wild Nacatl, which in this deck, because of its chromatic mana base and high volume of fetch lands, is generally going to be a 3/3 pretty easily. Sky Shroud Elite, this card doesn't see a ton of play, but it's really good. It's basically Curd Apes, except for what it checks is your opponent's mana base. It's very rare that there's a deck that plays no non-basics, so oftentimes it's just going to be a 2/3 for 1, which is pretty good. Rakdos Cackler, 2/2 for 1. Tattermunge Maniac, 2/1 for 1 with a downside, but still good enough. Figure of Destiny, 1/1 that pumps to a 2/2 and can become eventually an 8/8. Tougher to get this thing to an 8/8 in this deck, but pretty easy to get it to a 4/4. Pelt Collector just gets bigger every time you play something that's bigger than it. It also redistributes counters after it dies, I believe. Never mind. No, never mind. Enters the battlefield or dies. Narnum Renegade, yep, just a very easy to activate 2/3 body with Death Touch, which is not irrelevant. Kessig Prowler, another 2/1 for 1 that has some upside later on down the road. Experiment 1, kind of similar to the Pelt Collector, with the exception that you can actually regenerate this fella. Zergo Bellstriker, 2/2, Monastery Swiftspear, 1/2 with haste, and Prowess, which is the relevant part on this. It gets big pretty quick. Curd Ape, yep, good old school Arabian Nights aggressive card right here. Still good enough, and still got some game. You get to see this guy do some beat down in the games we play. Goblin Guide, yep, staple. Goblin Bushwhacker, this thing is pretty powerful. For 2 mana, you can basically, turbo over your opponent pretty rapidly. We're even running the new one, I think it's Reckless Bushwhacker right here. Pretty similar effect, a little bit harder to do, but still definitely worth it. I have cast it out for no value as well. Fire Drink Satyr, just slightly better than Jackal Pup, kind of on the low end of 1-drops in the deck, but still good. Gorger, yep, 2/1 for 1. Madness part of this text is not relevant. Scrapheap Scrounger, not impossible in this deck to get this card back from your graveyard, and it's a 2 mana 3/2, which is a solid rate. The Zerta Goblin, 2/2 haste or 3/3 for 2, strong. Voltaic Brawler, 4/3 attacker. You don't really plan on attacking with many of your threats more than twice, so you're good on this. You're not putting more energy into the deck, but you actually, I was gonna say, I don't think this thing makes energy. But if you get to do this twice, you're probably going to win the game. If you hit them with it twice, you're probably winning the game. Scab Clan Mauler, yep, just a decent-sized body with Trample and Bloodthirst, so it's basically a 3/3 Trampler for 2. Stormblood Berserker, really strong card. I love this card a lot. 2 mana, basically 3/3 with Menace, which is very powerful if you can incite the Bloodlust on it. Flinthoof Boar, yep, you're generally playing this for 3 mana, but it's 3 mana. It's basically a 2 mana 3/3 that on 3 mana can have haste as well. Greenwald Liberator, this card just gets big quickly. It becomes a 4/3 if you have Revolt, which is pretty beefy. Tarmogoyf, yep, just big. Burning Tree Emissary, yep, again, just good mana production. It's 2/2 for 2, but it produces mana and allows you to cast something relevant afterwards. Kari Zev, this card's actually kind of gone up significantly in my estimate. The fact that it has Menace makes it really hard to block, and actually 3 toughnesses become more and more relevant the faster decks get because there's more and more shocks around in formats, and it's just tougher to deal with. That said, yeah, it dies to Caracas. I got it, Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't, and if they don't, this thing generally takes people to Pound Town. Earthshaker Kenra, just very powerful effect here. You could even possibly put this in Disruption. The fact that this thing can come down and make it so they cannot block with something that has similar power is very, very good. And the fact that it comes back is cool, too. Gruul Spellbreaker, this thing's just a pounding. It's a 3/3 hexproof on your turn when it matters, which can have haste, or just becomes a 4/4 hexproof on your turn, which is generally when it's relevant, because you need to know if you can attack or not. It's also really powerful because you can choose to pump it, and unless they have a counter spell to counter your pump spell, this thing's just going to get size massive really quickly. And it has Trample. Oh boy. Reckless Bushwhacker. Yep, already talked about the Bushwhackers. Rampaging Ferocidon. Well, this deck plays a lot of creatures. It tends to have some quote-unquote suicide elements to it, kind of like the black deck that I've shown before. Rampaging Ferocidon is just so good. Banned in Standard, for a very, I don't want to say a very good reason. It probably didn't, maybe it had to be because of how that format broke out. But this card is just very, very powerful. It stops creature-based combos more often than not due to the amount of damage that your opponent would take. So, like something like Kiki combo tends to die to this unless they have you at a low enough life total. They can just make like 5 of them or 6 of them and kill you. But very powerful card. Legion Warboss. This thing just makes more dudes and gives them counters. It's basically a second copy of Goblin Rabblemaster, which is up next. These cards just win the game all on their own and are very, very powerful. On-Crop Crasher. This card has gone up a lot in my estimate. 3-2 for 3 with haste. The fact that it can make something not block is very, very powerful, though. Could even go into Disruption. Disruption Pile, kind of already talked most of these cards. Scab Clan, good against the spells-based decks. Harsh Mentor, good against like eggs or like anything that requires a lot of activated abilities to go infinite or any loop-style decks. Eidolon, good versus Storm, Spell Matters decks. Same with like Cindervines, tends to be good against spells matter-based decks as well. Dryad Militant, spells matter decks, really tough for them to beat this card. The Pump, so Rancor, just if you're not familiar with this card, this is the M13 version for some reason, but a very, very cool card. It gives it a creature, an enchant creature, it's an aura, +2/+0, and has trample. When Rancor is put to the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to your hand, which means you can basically just keep on reusing this thing, and the fact that it gives a creature trample is huge. It means you just pass a lot of damage through. Invigorated Rampage. This is a very efficient pump spell. It is trample +4/+0, and or you can split it onto 2 different bodies and do +2/+0 and trample on 2 different bodies to get a lot more damage through. Colossal Might, again trample, and it's +4/+2. This is just a ton of damage for 2 mana. Gorkland Rampager, +4/+4 and trample. That is a lot of damage for not a lot of investment. If you want to Blood Rush it, or you could also play it as just a 4/4 trampler, which is not a bad body. Collision Colossus. I don't think I've used the collision component of this to knock on a flyer, although it does deal with, a random Baneslayer Angel. Colossus is just a ton of damage. Basically, Colossus is Colossal Might, but just, it's 2 halves of a card. Become Immense. This is a lot of damage for very little. It does not give trample of note, but it's a Delve spell, instant, which generally means it's going to cast for 1 mana in the deck. Especially, you're not going to generally cast this when they have a lot of mana open. You're going to cast it when it's going to win you the game and when they're low on mana. Target's Command. Pump's Team also does damage to your opponent. I don't think I have used it to put land into the battlefield. It also says your opponents cannot gain life this turn, which it could be a relevant effect. I have not used it yet. Then you have all of the burn, which I kind of went over in this pile right here. So pretty simple deck. It's not exceedingly sophisticated in what it does. It is just an aggressive deck at heart that is called Blitz because it has probably greater ounce to killing faster with pump spells. And it's not a ton of pump spells. Realistically, it's like 7 to 8 pump spells, or like 7 to 8 pump effects, some of them spells, some of them not. And it has significant game against quite a bit in the format. I found that it did decent against mid-range, did very well against control, did well against combo. I did not get the opportunity to play the Aggro Mirror. I don't know how it would do in the Aggro Mirrors. But I didn't think it would be fine. It's got pretty beefy things. It's got quite a few things. And the pump spells, I think, tend to help it fight really well in creature-based combat. So anyways, guys, I'm going to go on a quick pause. Then I'm going to showcase some games with Red-Green Blitz here momentarily. Back at you. Alright, guys, we are back. And we're playing against Train Boy here. Train Boy tends to be a pretty itinerant control player. This hand is perfectly acceptable. It's not the most exciting, but it's also not horrendous. Opponent plays on a Tree of Tails and a Codex Shredder. I know I'm playing against combo at this point. I go ahead and get the Fire Drink Satyr down. They bin a Belcher, which I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I put down the Cindervines because I want to start getting incremental chip damage in, and I think they're probably on some sort of infinite loop deck, and I think that Cindervines could possibly beat that. They force through a Saheeli here. I don't really want to mess with Saheeli, so what I end up doing here is just playing out the Dryad Militant and invigorated rampaging my Fire Drink Satyr to just knock the Saheeli off the board. They're just steadily ditching cards with the Codex Shredder to get after more cards. Essentially, they can use Codex Shredder as a means of drawing. I do play out the Rampaging Ferocidon here. I doubt they have many creatures in deck. Probably the only one is like Walking Ballista and possibly an Emrakul. Get Tolarian Academy, which is very strong here. Cast out Everflowing Chalice for 2, pass the turn back. We draw a spear them, and they just go ahead and concede. So we just we out-aggroed them. They didn't get anything relevant that they needed with Codex Shredder, and they did not build their mana up in time to get back whatever was relevant with Codex Shredder to start comboing off. So we just get them here with RG aggro. And that's kind of what you're hoping to do is just out-tempo these combo decks, so that they're under significant enough pressure that basically they don't have time to set up, and that's kind of what we did here and just managed to get them. Quick pause, we'll be back for the next game in this match. Alrighty guys, we are back. This hand's fine. I'm probably just going to throw the Burst Lightning at face, EOT. This hand's not great, but it's also not the worst either. I just go ahead and play out the Boar here. The reason I play Boar around is because they have a Pyrite Spellbomb, and I would rather not have my Eidolon get Spellbombed. I think Eidolon would be good against them, but I don't think it's going to live through a Spellbomb here. I cast out a Cindervines. They mill a Reshape, get back a Reshape with their Academy mana, finding a Lotus so that they can go to an infinite loop. The problem with their loop here is this, guys. I'm going to pause it real quick. So you'll note I cast out Cindervines, overplaying another creature out. Well, I gave my opponent a choice. I attacked with Flinthoof Boar, which is blockable by Auriok Salvagers at face value. If they had chosen to block it, I would have invigorated, rampaged the Flinthoof Boar, and killed their Auriok Salvagers and passed a little bit of damage over the top. If they did not block, my plan was to put the Cindervines down, because I think Cindervines stops something exactly like this, which is what happens. The reason we didn't play Eidolon again is because we knew they had a Pyrite Spellbomb on board, which means the Eidolon's just going to die, so it's not going to do anything. The pig cannot be Pyrite Spellbombed. The problem with their combo here is they're going to start going through it and realize is they take 4 damage per every cycle of this. They play Lotus, take a damage, get the Lotus back, play Lotus again, take another damage, play out the bomb me once, they take a damage at the bomb, play Lotus again. So they're taking 4 damage every time they do this. They've sacked a bunch of their lands, so their life total has gone up, but they're not doing enough damage to me to actually kill me with this method. Their life total is going to reduce faster than mine will. They finally realize, I think, that that this isn't working. I tell them, I'm like, hey, I don't think the math works out on this, bud. They have to time spiral here, get back their Lotus, down to 2, and then just concede the game. So Cindervines did some significant work this game. I was very lucky to have had it in my hand to be able to use it here. And if we hadn't had it, we probably would have lost the game there, especially with the bomb already on board, because the Eidolon's not going to stop that nonsense. But Cindervines did some significant work here. I don't know if it's like a must include in your decks, but it's very good against combination style decks like this, especially decks that rely on an infinite loop of non-creature based spells to kill you. So very powerful. Alright guys, quick pause. We'll be back momentarily for the next game in these matches. Alrighty guys, we're back. We're playing against player Brahms, who I believe is on Orzhov Prison. See, you land on top, I bottom the land. I want to hit a 1-drop here. I just play out the Firelit Thicket, because if they have LD, I want that land to get blown up. Excuse my language, I fucking hate Firelit Thicket. They have Soul Ring here, which is fine. I mean, it's not great for me. I play out the Kairi Zev. It does not play around Karakas as well, so maybe that was a poor play. But I also figured it was going to die, and I kind of wanted Voltaic Brawler more than I wanted Kairi Zev. I get the Gruul Spellbreaker down, knock out the Liliana the Veil, find a Mox Ruby here, knock out their Sorin. I'm feeling pretty good about this game. I'm not doing bad here. If I get Wrathed, I'm not doing well. They attack with their dude, I block and figure that I'm going to get Wrathed here, and they balance me, and that's really rough. They blow up a land here. I have Burn plus this Dryad Militant. So the game was kind of anyone's, in my opinion, up until this last draw step. So when they balance down to 0 cards. And they kind of raw dog the Crucible of the World straight off the top of their deck, and already had Strip Mine they had played on turn 1. So now we're fairly locked at this point. We basically have 2 Moxen in the deck, and I have 2 burn spells that are not that relevant, and they have a way to get back a recursive life-gaining threat, i.e. the Shambling Vent. So I just go ahead and pack it in here. I'm pretty dead. That was a fortunate draw on their part, so, I mean, it's tough to beat that if we don't already have a pretty overwhelming board presence. We did not due to balance, so we go on to Game 2 here. Quick pause, we'll be back momentarily, guys. Alrighty, we're back, guys, and this is an interesting game. So, hand 1, hand had no lands. Hand 2 has 1 land, not a dual land, has a bunch of 2-drops that have double mana requirements, and or are not cards you cast in the early game, and a Vortex, not a keepable hand. So I'm going to 5. 5, no lands. 4, no lands. So at this point, I'm like, well, I'm probably losing this game. I top scry a non-land, it's Skull Clamp, and I bottom it. I'm sorry, I don't top scry it. I scry it and put it on the bottom. I bottom scry it. Drawing a land, so I'm like, oh boy, we get to cast a spell. I don't expect to win this game at this point. I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose. I can probably count on like one hand how many games of Highlander I've won after I've mulliganed to 4. Pretty rough. This deck does run quite a few lands. They play a hidden stockpile out. They do get a servo from it. They block with their servo. I play out a Figure of Destiny. They languish the board. So, again, I'm in a pretty bad spot. I have Lightning Bolt, and that is it. They get a stockpile token. I still am not drawing lands, so I'm just sitting here doing nothing. I could have fetched for a non-Taiga if I wanted to play around Wasteland here, but I think at this point, like, I'm just playing to my best ounce, which is to, like, draw spells I can cast. Opponent Demonic Tutors. Now I'm like, wow, I am so effed. They play a Liliana. This is not the worst for me. If that's what they got, it's not the worst. Now, I'm kind of wishing I had another land so I could Flint Hoof Boar, but I cannot. I do Lightning Strike the Liliana away because I don't want to get chiseled out by that. I have to discard my beautiful pig here. I Lightning Bolt away the Kaya. Now, I've drawn a Price of Progress, which is actually a pretty big game here because they have a ton of lands. They very aggressively Pox here. I get rid of the Jit because it's not likely I'm going to be able to cast basically what's a 4-drop in Jit. Draw into a land here. It's fine. They're down to 4 lands now, but 10 life. So one more non-basic land, and I can actually win this game, which is pretty amazing. I was kind of amazed at how this game played out, because I did not expect in a million years to be in a position where I thought I could actually win. I think they made a play error here. They accidentally activate the Mutavault and hidden stockpile here. Make a servo. I do some bad math there and think that I can cast Scrap Heap out of the graveyard. At this point, I just go ahead and slam the Goblin Rabble Master to put a clock on them, send in with a Gobbo token. I believe they take down to 9. So I'm 1 life point away from winning the game. They play out a Vampire. I slam with all. And this is exactly enough, I want to say, to actually win the game. No, I'm 1 short. Yeah, they stay at 9 because they block really intelligently. I like how Bram's blocked there. I don't really like how they played Pox here, but I do like how they blocked here. I don't know what they DT'd for. It must have been Sorin. Figured they could lock it up. Now I have lethal because I have the Scrap Heap back. I have not played my additional lands to play around, like, I don't know, hand attack. Random hand attack. They double block here. I don't want to kill the Mutavault in combat because it'll reduce the damage that I make by 1. And they go ahead and perish here. 2 Price of Progress, which is a hell of a card. So somehow we won this mull to 4, and I was really shocked and really pleased with how the deck performed, despite, kind of putting me in a bad spot with only 4 cards. So quick pause, guys. We'll be back for game number 3 in match 2 against Orzhov Pox. Alright, guys, we are back. Reasonable hand this time. Actually a powerful hand, so we get a good hand this time. It's got basically turn 1 2-drop, which is very powerful. Play around Wasteland here because I can. I'm just going to go ahead and dump my hand. If they have the turn 3 on curve, Toxic Deluge sucks, but they have a tapped land. I go ahead and fetch here. Go ahead and just slam a Cindervines, leaving up the Atarka's Command. Slam them down to a very low life total here. I was kind of hoping they'd try to block with the Mutavault. When they don't, I figure they have Damnation in hand. If they have T-Del, which is what they end up having, then I can actually use Tarkus Command to pump my team and save the Karizev, which is what I do. It also puts them to 1, draw the burn spell, put them to -2. So, quick lock, we basically beat a Toxic Deluge against a player on the draw. Now, it did come down to having a tapped land. If their land did not come into play tapped here, we probably would not have had them. Probably would have been at a significantly higher life total and been in a more dubious position with a life-linking threat on the board. But that's not how it played out. And there's definitely a cost to playing lands like Bazooka Bog and Shambling Vent, tap lands in your deck. And it's that sometimes you don't have the ability to interact, to have board impacting plays on curve because of them, despite the value they represent in a long duration game, of which my deck is not trying to go to because it doesn't really do that very well. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back for the next game in this series of match sets. Alrighty, folks, we are back playing against Mudra Man here. Good enough hand. It's got a 1-drop, it's got a 2-drop, it's got some board interaction. It's got a little bit of everything going on. I'm going to play the Vexing Devil a little bit later, I think. I just play out the 2-1 here because I actually want to get board presence. They appear to be on Grixis of some variety. Draw a Reckless Bushwhacker, which is a fine card. Attempt an attack here. Attack goes through just fine. I play out the Voltaic Brawler. They impulse here, and I believe next turn they have an Arc Trail, which is rough. Arc Trail is pretty savage. It's like, yep, okay, get one of my lands nugged, which stinks, but I immediately draw another one, which is good. And I have 2 1-drops to play here. Get in for 4 off of the Vexing Devil. Get himmed. Not looking good at this point. We're pretty far behind. I should have taken a damage off the Mana Confluence there. I don't think it's that relevant in this matchup. We're playing against Grixis, but was wrong. It hit Fire Iced, which is rough. Draw Mox, play the Mox. I don't want it to get hand attacked out of my deck. They take 5 off of their Bob, and then I believe try to end step Venser their own Bob to not die to it. They drew a Keranos, what they revealed, big Keranos. So I've got nothing else going on. They Ancestral here, and I think I'm still probably losing this. They play a Kalitas, and I'm looking for a draw step here. And boy, oh boy, do I have a draw step. I get an On-Crop Crasher, attack, exert, forcing Kalitas not to block, Colossal Might to pump it to a 7-power attacker and win the game. So this deck definitely can have some very powerful draws. Opponent tapped out there. They have 6 cards in hand. If they get the untap, we are losing this game. There's just no way we're winning. Basically it was draw the answer to win now, which was either pop or a haste creature that had evasion. Of which there are not many. So I got very lucky in drawing the On-Crop Crasher here. That said, our opponent had a very stellar start against us. They had an Arc Trail into a Wasteland, into a Hymn, into a Fire Ice, into an Ancestral. Arc Trail and Hymn and Fire Ice all got 2-for-1s, Ancestral 3-for-1. So we are infinitely behind on cards right now. That actually saw play, were impactful in play. So they also had a very solid draw as well. So I can say I got lucky, and I did, but our opponent also had solid answers to everything that we did, but we managed to still kind of get there with this red-green deck. So quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for the next game in this match set. Alrighty. So this hand's a definite keep. It's a 3-lander. It has a pretty fast clock. I mean, it's got basically two power attackers. It curves pretty well into Sulfuric Vortex, so I like it. Play on a turn 1 Underground Sea. I'm happy to see this because they're going to take damage off of it, and every point's going to really matter for my deck. Get another 2-drop, which is not bad. I'll probably play that before I will play a Wild Nacatl out. Probably save the Nacatl for another turn. When they do nothing, I'm kind of, a little bit hesitant here. So what I end up doing is just playing out the Nacatl because I want a 2-spell. If they're going to try to leave up mana on my turn, I want to be able to 2-spell is kind of my philosophy. They're down to 15 at this point. They've taken 3 damage off their own cards. 2 from the Underground Sea, 1 from the fetch land. I just go ahead and throw the Bolt of Face here to force their action. They have a Vendilion Click here, which takes a look at my hand. Takes away the Sulfuric Vortex. I just go ahead and Burst Lightning this. Haste in the Zerta Goblin. Definitely giving it haste. Hit for half their life total and say go. Now, basically, they need a Toxic Deluge. And even if they do, I can follow it up with 2 threats in 1 turn. I believe they go ahead and concede at this point. Well, it looks like Moto's going to freeze up on it, but I believe the concession actually happens here, guys. Quick pause. We'll be back for the last game in this match set, or this league. I actually played this deck in League. Alright, guys. Back. And we're playing against Jackie the Puppet. Jackie's a solid player, so it should be a pretty good game. This is a stellar hand. The Mox openers tend to be really strong in this deck. I get a Taiga so I can pump this Curd Ape. Play Curd Ape second after Taiga's in play to pump the Experiment 1. Got 4 damage coming at them next turn. Get Thoughtseized. I like his take here. I think some players would take the Atarkus command because it's the only card that's literally castable in my hand. I think that would be wrong, though. If you don't have a Wrath that you can do by turn 3, you're probably going to lose to the Goblin Rabblemaster. They play on a Search for Escanto, which to me means their hand's really slow. I'm going to pump all the damage I can into them here. I just dome them for 3 off Atarkus command and pump my team for additional 3 damage, or 2 damage on board plus 3 from the spell itself. Get them down to 3. Draw a Forked Bolt, which means either of my threats are lethal prior to casting Become Events, which I don't want to do in the face of open mana. Because I have the Forked Bolt, if they have a counter spell, they can counter this. If they have a kill spell, they can kill something, but the Become Events is going to kill them as the last card. So they're pretty much in a forced play where they don't have a good play, unless they have Mental Misstep plus like a counter spell, or Force of Will plus a counter spell would do it here. They evidently do not. I basically tell them have those answers specifically or die, and they don't have those answers and they die. So quick pause, guys. We'll be back for the next game against Jackie the Puppet. Alrighty, guys, back. And this hand sucks. This hand sucks. This hand's a keep. Bottom the Thopter. We're probably not winning with this hand. This hand is just really slow. It's not a great hand. We really got to hit lands is what we're hoping for here. I did not want to go to 4. This is not a hand that you go to 4 on. Sadly, the 5 I had in the one game where I had to go to 4 definitely was. Draw land, which is nice. I believe I opt just to cast out the Eidolon, knowing it's going to get countered, but a lot of folks will, like, quote-unquote, play around counter magic by not playing anything. I think that's 100% wrong. I don't think you suspend here, because when you're playing against Grixis specifically, then they rise fall you and you just lose your cards anyways. So I kind of liked how we played it. I think you just force them to have the answer. If they do, and they use it. They play on a Dreadhorde, what is this, Arcanist. This card's really bad for us because they have a Ponder and I have a Ponder in the yard, which means they're going to get some advantage off of it. And I don't have a good attack into it because it is a 1/3. And they have removal, which means they're going to attack again and remove another one of my threats, which will likely be the Figure of Destiny. So if I draw a Mountain, I cannot pump it. I'm in a lot of trouble here, guys. Not going to lie. I have a 2/1 on board, and I am hellbent against my opponent's 3 cards with an onboard card engine. I draw into a Skull Clamp, which is fine. I have to try to attack first. I may try to clamp this after combat, but I want to at least try to get in. They cast out a Nimble Obstructionist. I think this is a little bit aggressive, but that's just me. Or not aggressive. I think I actually would have looked to try to use that to win the game. Especially with the onboard Dreadhorde Arcanist. I think you're doing okay to take 2 there down to 11. I suppose they didn't know the last card in my hand, but I don't have a card in my deck that can kill them from there. I guess the worst case would be like a big pump spell. I just throw this burn spell at their face. It doesn't make sense. They have 3 cards in hand and they're not doing anything, which means they either have counter magic or hand attack, or kill spells. And if they have hand attack, if I leave cards in hand, I'm just not getting anything out of them. I draw away a Harsh Mentor here. My Skull Clamp is now not my own. The deck is going to steal it after I equip it here. They go ahead and Vapor Snag this Deuterino. Show us the hand attack that we're pretty sure they had before. They Lightning me, getting rid of it. Attack in. And now, because the Dreadhorde Arcanist is pumped, it can get 2-drop spells. Draw to a Scab Clan Berserker, which is not a bad one, but I'm at a very low life total and getting out tempoed pretty handily here. I do knock out the Dak Fade, hoping they don't have more relevant cards in hand, but they have pretty much all relevant cards. I concede here. Yeah, I think it makes sense to concede here. I cannot cast a Price of Progress to draw the game here. It would only put them to 1. So there's no point in playing onward. The best outcome I could probably hope for from this position is like if they had like one more non-basic island, and I price them, I could draw the game and force games 3 and 4. But unfortunately, nope. I'm not going to go for that. I'll force a conclusion in the 3rd game. So, quick pause, guys. We'll be back for game number 3 against Jackie the Puppet. Alrighty, we are back. And, yeah, hand's great. It's got a 1-drop, it's got a 2-drop, it's got some removal, it's got a 3-drop that kind of gives evasion to everything. Hand's just fine. I guess 10th Street Hooligan's also just utility, too. I cast out the Kessig Prowler. This thing is like 90% going to die, but it's okay. They shock, which is great. I play my land main 1 to make them think maybe I have pump. It'll incentivize them killing it. They fatal push it. Too easy. I'm not going to not cast a spell this turn. So I cast out the Tin Street for no value. They shock again. Have the Dread Horde. I play out my land to play around Daze. I also want to fetch here because I'm drawing a lot of lands here. I've drawn, I think, all lands this game, which is not really where this deck wants to be. It wants to kind of have a consistent, steady stream of gas. Draw another land, fetch again, and I am not liking my draw. My draw has been all landage at this point. Getting 3 down to 11, but I don't have them that low right now. Opponent passes, and I draw Become Immense. I actually opt to keep all the lands in hand. I figure they're probably on counter magic here, and I don't want them, if they have a kill spell, I don't want them to just kill my creature. I want them to think maybe this guy has all burn, and I need to watch out for his burn. I think allowing me to attack there makes sense because I could have a main 2 creature. They play on a Kess Dissident Mage here, and now because they're at 8, I draw another land. So I drew literally just Become Immense, and I'm about to win. Basically, I say, hey, have Force of Will or die, or have like Pact of Negation plus like Stifle or die. Force the Kess not to block, attack in for 9, put them to -1. Get very lucky here. I feel like if they had gotten the untap, this game just goes completely sideways because they just Dreadbore my thing, or they have a fetch land plus Fatal Push my thing. And I'm on 2 just literal goose eggs in hand. I just don't have reach right now. And I feel like from this position, Grixis probably could roll us up unless we really just like waited long and sat on some cards. But sitting on cards against Grixis is generally pretty dubious because they have discard, and discard tends to be really good against like a red deck trying to sit on spells. Anyways, guys, end up going 4-0 in this weekly league. I think this is week 4's league for May. Had a pretty good run this month, and I'm glad I got to finish it up with this cool red-green Blitz deck built by Greg Van Horn. Deck is very strong. I've played red historically. I've obviously played Suey Black. I don't tend to be an aggressive player in general, but I do definitely enjoy playing it, and I also think that it makes to make you a more well-rounded player as well, to play like different strategies and archetypes. And these like the red aggressive decks are very fun too. And this red-green deck, I think theoretically, like when you first hear like, oh, you're gonna mix green and red and make an aggro deck, it seems like, what? Why would you want to have trouble with the mana? Well, at the end of the day, I think you get a lot more out of it. I think coupling the 2 colors together gives the deck a lot more punch. And it's very, very powerful. It also gives it better range against the mid-range decks because you can make your creatures large and in charge in combat and generally trample over the top of much threats that you would think are more significant than the threats that you're playing. And it's still fast enough against like combo and control to just kind of run them over. So, very fun deck, very cool deck. I hope you guys enjoyed both the deck tech and the gameplay here. And if Canadian Highlander is not a format that you've played before, give it a shot on MTGO. It's very cheap. There is a weekly league run by Nash T on the Canadian Highlander Discord. So go check it out. Also, folks are streaming it now. Highlander, aficionados and regulars, Ben Wheeler and Jared White both have streams that they do fairly regularly, and they have some amazing content out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay and deck tech, and hopefully we'll be back relatively soon with more Canadian Highlander content, because this format is, 1, wide open, and 2, just gorgeous. You can play pretty much whatever you want, and there is pretty much something for everyone to be had in the format. So enjoy, guys, and take care now.